Ready to shine inside out? Welcome to Polished Beauty Podcast, where ambition meets empowerment. We talk business, beauty, brain, body. I am your host, Dr. Daisy Ayim, triple board certified cosmetic surgeon and OBGYN. Let's get polished. Hello. Welcome to this episode of Polished Beauty Podcast. We are going to dive into the fascinating life of oocyte formation. Okay, I just threw in a big word, oocyte. What is that? Eggs, plural, singular, but oocyte formation of a woman. We're going to talk about egg reproductive cycle of women, okay? It is such a fascinating topic because when I say we, women, we go through life without understanding our anatomy, without understanding some facts about our body, which is very important for us to know as we live, pursuing career, family, personal life, whatever. We need to know these facts because I feel and I know it's going to be important to you as you make decisions for yourself. You know, when you're going off to college, you do the research, right? You look at the school, how many students, what is the major, what's the cost, what's the tuition. You do your research, don't you? When you are looking for a job, you're looking for things or parameters that make you happy. Is it within the scope job description that you're capable of doing? Is it in a location that's convenient for you? Are the benefits what you want for your life, right? You do your research before you accept it. Well, here we are as women. You don't do your research as a woman because number one, you just believe that you're a woman and everything is okay or not. You just don't know, right? So I want us to talk about oocyte formation because it's one of the biggest neglected area in a woman's life, and it has the most impact in your life, right? Something that you ignore, or whether it's willingly or unwillingly, and it has such a huge impact in your life. So let's get into oocyte formation, okay? Number one, women are born with all the eggs they will ever have. When you are born, the eggs you have, that's it. So let's backtrack. When you're 20 weeks old, meaning 5 months old, in your mother's womb, this cute little fetus, you have about 6 to 7 million eggs. That's a lot. Can you count it? 1, 2, 3, no, just kidding. 6 to 7 million eggs at 20 weeks gestation. That's equivalent to 5 months pregnant, right? So when you're 5 months old, you have 6 to 7 eggs, million eggs. They stay kind of paused. Think of it as this millions of eggs just pause. They were growing and they've not reached their full potential and they just pause because, that's how God designed it. And it stays there. But what happens is that a lot of the eggs just naturally die off. This is cell programming. It has nothing to do with anything other than they stay here and they just die off. So that by the time you go through 6 months, 7 months, 9 months, and you're born, you are left with only 1 to 2 million eggs. You started at 6 to 7 million. Now you're 1 to 2 million at birth. Fascinating, right? This is a fact that I think we all need to know as girls, right? As women, we need to know this. So you have 1 to 2 million eggs at birth. What happens? Well, you go through a toddler phase, the cutest phase ever, right? You go through kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, puberty kicks in. And for puberty, it's different for every woman, right? Some girls have puberty super young, 8, 9 years old. Oh my gosh, that's too young, but it does happen. But for the most part, puberty is around 13, 14, 15, around those years. So whenever a woman hits puberty, the number of eggs left is, can you guess? 300 to 400,000 eggs. You started at 6 to 7 million at 20 weeks gestation. When you're born, it's 1 to 2 million. And now at puberty, it's dropped down to 300 to 400,000 eggs. Most of it just dies off naturally. It's not of your doing, it's by design. Okay, so now at puberty, what happens to your body? Hormonal changes, yeah? You start having your cycle. Every time you have a cycle, you have one of those eggs that was frozen in time, that was paused, as I mentioned earlier, matriculates, becomes a dominant follicle, and ovulates, which means release, right? So every time you have a cycle, you release an egg. There are 12 months in a year, so you have 12 eggs released in a year, sometimes more, right? Because you may ovulate and release more than one egg. But the general perspective is that you release one egg per cycle, per month. This goes on till whenever your cycle stops, right? And for women, it's different. It could be a couple reasons why your cycle stopped. It could be due to surgery, it could be due to a medical condition, or just natural menopause. So in your lifespan as a woman of reproductive age, you release about 300 to 500 oocytes out of the 300 to 500,000 oocytes you had, right? So what happens to the other eggs? Same thing, just dies off. Natural cell programming, it dies off on its own. So that by the time you reach 40 years old as a woman, your egg count is about 25,000. All right, so follow the girl math here. We started with 6 to 7 million at 20 weeks, 1 to 2 million at birth, 300 to 500,000 or 400,000 at puberty, 25,000 at 40 years old. So most of the eggs that we were born with dies off, flicker away, just says night-night, and that's it, right? Well, there's value in knowing this information. The value in knowing this information is you can plan better for your life as a woman, understanding the limitation or the restriction or the natural progression of your body. There are so many women among us that don't know this information, are not aware of this information, and you just live through life making important decisions and not understanding this important fact that can affect your decision. As an OBGYN, I have been graced to meet women of all walks of life, right? Of all stages of childbearing, of all dynamic of family. And I will speak to the ones that desire to become a mother and are unable to for one reason or another, right? Most, if not all, did not know this information I just presented. So you can imagine if you're a well-accomplished woman, ambitious woman, which you are, and you have achieved the heights of your career, whether it's corporate, lawyer, medicine, business owner, whatever it is, you have achieved it to the highest altitude. And at 42, you decide you want to start a family, or that's when you meet the love of your life. You don't know. And here you are having difficulties. I really believe if that woman was aware of what happens to her oocytes, the natural progression of her oocytes, I believe she would apply the same intellect, the same research in starting her family young, just like she did with her career. So this information is valuable to women, and you must and you have to know this. Please share this with any woman in your life, those numbers, okay? So what is the grand scheme of things? What does this mean in the bigger picture? I use my hands when I talk, especially when I'm really passionate about the subject. In your 20s, you are most fertile. That's the best time for you to go ahead and have those babies. Yes, I said it, in your 20s. Unfortunately, in your 20s, most women are not financially in the best position to start a family, but that is the best time to start, So you have to do some girl math. Do you delay childbearing, but then run the risk of having fertility issue? You may have the money, but you can't buy the eggs, right? Or do you have the child, but then you're going through more stress, worry, but at least you have your children, right? And later in life, you could always switch your career and get the career that you always wanted. So it's one of those things where you almost have to make a decision for one or the other, but I think you can make a decision for both as you go along, But just keep in mind, you could always change your career. You could always scale up in life financially. You can always do it anytime in life, but you cannot scale up your oocytes, your eggs. So as a woman, your journey, your life, your eggs, you have to put those things on the table as you are pursuing your happiness and your desires in this life. In your 30s, fertility begins to decline gradually around age 30, 32. By the time you hit your late 30s, so I would put that, say 37, it takes a drastic decline. And why is this happening? A couple of things. The number of eggs is continuously decreasing. Remember I told you earlier, at 40, you have 25,000 eggs. So at 37, that's when that number from puberty just takes a nosedive. So when you get to 40, it's only like 25,000 eggs left. And the amount of eggs that is left is not much. The quality of the eggs that is left is not good compared to your 20s when you had higher volume and better quality. So now you have two challenges in your 40s. You have fewer eggs and poor quality. So hormonal changes does impact your ovarian function, and that's something to keep in mind. So perimenopause is that transitional phase that you have in your 40s up onto menopause. The quality of eggs at that time just keeps going down. The number of eggs goes down until eventually when you hit menopause at 51 and there are basically no eggs for the most part, right? Just for review, menopause is defined as going 1 year without any cycle, and the average age is 51 menopause, right? But let's go back to girl math. Girl math when it comes to our eggs. Women, ladies, young girls, anyone listening to this podcast right now, you have and you must know this fact about your body. You are born with a certain number of eggs. As you get older, this number decreases significantly because most of the eggs just die off. So keep that in mind as you're going through high school, college, pursuing your career, thinking about family, dating, marriage, all of those things. Understand that there is a window that your probability of having a family that you desire is narrow. I digress for a minute. If you think back into the prior decades, like our grandparents' age, they had children when they were younger. I know what you're gonna say. Well, back then, women were not working as much. The husbands were working and taking care of the family, and the women just, they had the time and the ability to have those kids. Yes, that's true. But what is also true in that statement is that by them having children younger, you didn't have this fertility conversation as much. Just because by nature's design or by God's design, your best time to conceive was at a young age. So in some way, they kind of knew, right? In our current modern time, with women being breadwinners, being the sole provider, pursuing career-driven pathways, motherhood, childhood, having kids, it's a priority, but it's not a priority. And when it becomes a priority, then you run into difficulties. So, PSA, if you're a young, ambitious woman pursuing your career, equally think and prioritize motherhood if it's something you desire. And go for it when you're young as opposed to you're older, just because of the odds, right? You're not a gambler, but if you have a higher odds probability to win, I'm sure you're going to take that odd. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm definitely not discouraging anyone from not having children later in life. Certainly, life gives you what it gives you, and you make the best of it at any age, at any time. And that should be your mantra. But be well equipped with this information. Be well informed with this information as you take a step forward, understanding that time may not be on your side when it comes to your oocyte, your eggs. So the take-home nugget, I want to just share a few stories in my practice that I found very fascinating and just make this oocyte journey incredibly incredible. The oldest woman I have delivered in my practice that spontaneously conceived, meaning that she got pregnant on her own without any help, was 47, right? I've just gone through telling you these facts about eggs and oocytes, and the availability of eggs dramatically decreases. And here you are, you have this amazing story. And there are many stories in my practice of women conceiving in their 40s and having healthy babies. So by no means is this information taking away your hope or your joy or your desire to want to pursue motherhood later in life. It is possible. The odds are slimmer, but it's not impossible until you're in menopause. Yes, there's a small hope. Okay? Thank you for joining me on this episode, and I really appreciate you listening. I will see you next time. I have an important guest coming up in the next episode. We're going to talk about oocytes, but in a different light. Stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed this episode and thank you for listening. Video recording of this episode will be featured on our YouTube channel, Dr. Daisy Ayim. We are also found on Instagram at Polish Beauty Podcast or at Dr. Daisy Ayim. Remember, a new episode drop every Wednesday, so stay tuned. Please like, share, follow.